Ferrari just dropped the first proper look at the 2026 Revolution, and honestly, I'm still processing what I just saw. Lewis Hamilton, on his very first proper run at Fiorano, became the first driver to actually show us how this active aero thing works in real life. Not renders, not simulations, actual footage of those front wing elements dropping down and the rear wing opening up. And look, I know we've all been hearing about these regulations for months, but seeing it actually happen is a completely different story. The car looks aggressive. It sounds different, and Ferrari has clearly taken a massive gamble with their design philosophy. So in this video, I'm going to break down exactly what Ferrari showed us with the SF-26, why their design choices are either genius or completely mental, and what this active aero footage actually tells us about how different racing is going to be this year. Because trust me, this isn't just another regulation change. So why does this matter so much? Well, think about where Ferrari was just 12 months ago. They were the team that decided to basically give up on 2025 in April, which at the time felt absolutely insane. While McLaren was dominating with Lando and Oscar, while Red Bull was imploding with all that Horner drama, Ferrari just went silent. They stopped developing the SF-25, accepted they'd finish 4th in the championship, and bet everything on getting 2026 right. That's not normal. That's not how F1 teams usually operate. You don't just write off an entire season unless you genuinely believe the next set of regulations is going to shuffle the entire deck. And here's the thing about Ferrari and regulation changes. Their track record is properly mixed. They nailed the hybrid era initially back in 2014, then completely lost the plot. They got the 2022 ground effect regulations halfway right, built a rocket ship that couldn't finish races, and then watched Red Bull figure it out properly. So when they made that call last April to focus entirely on 2026, you had to wonder if they were being strategic geniuses or just repeating old mistakes. But this time feels different because of the scale of what's changing. We're not talking about tweaking the floor or adjusting the rear wing. The entire power unit philosophy is flipping to 50-50 electrical and combustion power. The cars are getting shorter, lighter, and now they've got these active aero systems that fundamentally change how you attack corners and straights. It's the biggest technical reset the sport has ever seen, bigger than the hybrid era, bigger than ground effect. And Ferrari looked at that situation and said, right, we're going all in. Which brings us to what they actually showed us at Fiorano, because the SF-26 isn't just their interpretation of the new rules, it's their answer to whether that gamble was worth it. And from what we've seen so far, they've gone properly radical with their approach. Let's talk about what Ferrari actually did here, because the more I look at this car, the more I think they've either cracked the code or they're about to have the most expensive learning experience in recent F1 history. That front suspension change from pull rod to push rod, that's Ferrari admitting they got it completely wrong. For 2 years, they persisted with that pull rod setup at the front. And for 2 years, their drivers complained about steering feel, about not being able to trust the front end on corner entry. Charles was diplomatic about it, Carlos was less so, and now Lewis shows up and suddenly they bin the entire concept. Coincidence? Come on. You don't make that fundamental a change unless the new guy walks in and goes, yeah, this isn't gonna work for me. And honestly, good. Sometimes you need fresh eyes to tell you that your clever engineering solution is actually just making life difficult for no reason. But here's where it gets interesting with the side pods and that whole cooling philosophy they're running. Those high-mounted intakes with the bypass duct underneath, that triangular power unit intake that's noticeably smaller than what we've seen from Mercedes or Alpine. This tells me Ferrari thinks they've found something with packaging efficiency. And packaging in 2026 isn't just about making the car look tidy, it's about managing the thermal chaos of a power unit that's now pushing way more electrical power through the system. You've got batteries that need cooling, you've got an MGU-K that's doing 3 times the work it used to, and you've still got an internal combustion engine that needs to breathe. If Ferrari have genuinely figured out how to package all of that tighter than everyone else, that rear end stays narrow, the diffuser works better, and you've got a faster car. If they haven't, you're looking at overheating issues and having to open up the bodywork mid-season, which completely ruins your Aero concept. And that's the gamble, isn't it? They stopped developing last year's car in April. 4 months into the season, they just accepted being fourth and put every single resource into this. That's hundreds of millions of euros and an entire year of competitive irrelevance bet on the idea that they understood these regulations better than teams who kept developing through the whole season. McLaren was still finding half a second here and there in October, while Ferrari's engineers were already deep into 2026 simulations. Either that head start translates into a genuine advantage when we get to Melbourne, or it turns out you can't actually predict this stuff 18 months in advance, and they've just wasted a year. The active Aero footage from Hamilton's run shows the system works mechanically, which is reassuring because imagine if it didn't. But working and working optimally are two very different things. How much drag are you actually shedding? How quickly can you deploy it mid-corner without unsettling the car? What happens when it rains and you need different Aero modes? These are questions nobody has proper answers to yet, because nobody's raced these cars. Ferrari's bet is that starting this development process 12 months early gives them enough time to find those answers first. We'll know if they were right in about 6 weeks. So where does this leave us? Ferrari's either about to justify one of the boldest strategic calls in modern F1, or they're going to spend the first half of the season explaining why giving up on 2025 didn't actually buy them anything. And honestly, I'm leaning towards thinking they might have actually got this one right. Not because the SF-26 looks particularly revolutionary in the photos, but because of the timing. Everyone else was still fighting over 2025 scraps, while Ferrari's entire engineering department was living in 2026. That's a genuine advantage if, and it's a massive if, their simulation tools were even remotely accurate. My bet? Ferrari wins one of the first 3 races. Maybe not Melbourne, because first race chaos is always unpredictable, but by the time we get to Jeddah or Shanghai, that active Aero system is going to be dialed in enough that either Lewis or Charles puts it on pole and converts. The real question is whether they can sustain it, because remember, they're brilliant at starting season strong and then watching everyone else catch up. But if that cooling package actually works and the pushrod front end gives the drivers the confidence they've been missing, we might finally see Ferrari do what they haven't managed since 2008, actually deliver on the hype. Look, if you want to catch every twist of this 2026 chaos as it unfolds, because trust me, it's going to get messy, hit that subscribe button. I'll be here breaking down every shakedown, every surprise, every team that thought they nailed the regulations and then realizes they absolutely didn't. Here's my question for you. Does Ferrari's year-long head start actually mean anything, or have they just given themselves 12 extra months to develop in the wrong direction? Drop your take in the comments.